Hey, with Hat and Cattle community. Today we are here with Jim Futrell, an amusement park historian. So, if you were here for our first ever panel last week, we discussed AI with a historian, a chaplain, and an AI expert. And while I was doing research trying to find the historian, I came across Jim's profile on LinkedIn. And it said amusement park historian, and I was immediately intrigued. I was like, what is this? And did a little deep dive on his profile. And I'm sure he was thinking, who is this girl in Texas who's ended up on my LinkedIn profile? Reached out, and Jim has been so kind to sit with us and have basically a fireside chat about his start, his journey, about all about amusement parks. So Jim, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Spring thoughts tend to turn to amusement parks, so the timing's really good. Yeah.
For sure. Here in Texas, the closest one to Dallas Fort Worth area is Six Flags in Arlington.
hmm
Have
Yeah, and that was that's kind of a interesting piece of history, as it was the first successful regional theme park. After Disneyland opened, lots of people were trying to replicate that model, and there were several really notable failures before Angus Wynn came up with a business model that actually worked. So it is a piece of history right there in Texas.
My goodness, and you've just dropped some trivia knowledge for us. So thank you. Thank you. Let's go to the beginning. So when again, I was doing research, I've heard several podcasts that you've been on, and you've written so many books on theme parks. Everyone seems to come back to a pivotal moment when you were a child
hmm
and you went on a trip with your family. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been fascinated with amusement parks. Some of my earliest memories are when we would visit my grandparents in Cincinnati. I spent part of my youth in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we would go to the amusement park there called Coney Island, which was actually one regarded as one of the best run amusement parks in the country. It was so highly regarded that Walt Disney even went there to learn how to operate an amusement park.
That's great.
Um, so, I mean, I have these very vivid memories. I was probably 4 or 5 years old of visiting the park, waiting in the picnic grounds while my family finished up with a family picnic. Just kind of in agony because I wanted to go on the rides, and being there at night and the lights and the sounds just fascinated me. Um, we had we had in 1971 moved to Chicago, and the following year went back to visit my grandparents, and I still remember this very clear moment about standing on my grandparents' front porch and asking my dad if we were going to go to Coney Island. And he said it closed. And I felt absolutely devastated. But he, was quick to reassure me. He said, "Don't worry, they moved to a new place. We're going there, which was Kings Island, which even in and of itself has built itself into an iconic institution in the industry." And yeah, from there, I kind of never looked back. I had always been fascinated by what was moved from Coney Island to Kings Island, and would ask relatives about that. So the next, what I would consider milestone moment was, it was in June of 1974. It was the last day of school, I remember. So I was in the backyard enjoying the first day of summer vacation,
Huh?
and our neighbor comes over, and she says, "Hi, Jimmy," and she talked about how she had just gone to the groundbreaking for the Marriott's new theme park, now known as Six Flags Great America,
Mm.
and brought us the swag that they handed out. So there was a Mylar Bugs Bunny poster, but the main thing was the first press kit for the park, which had like the artist drawings of what the various areas was going to look like, and I was absolutely fascinated and would study it endlessly. Yeah, and then there was a book that came out. And was able to get it from the local bookstore, called The Great American Amusement Parks by Gary Curiozzi. Really, the first illustrated history of the amusement park industry. Again, something that I would spend hours studying. went to the public library, checked out the three books they had on amusement parks at the time over and over again. And yeah, really just it started building. I'd go down to the library and go through the Reader's Guide to Periodic Literature and find articles on amusement parks, go through phone books and find out which amusement parks were in what cities.
Well, phone book, what is that? I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, what's the Reader's Guide to Periodic Literature, too? Um, so, throughout the 70s, it started snowballing. And, when Great America opened, there was a lot of nostalgia for the Lost Amusement Park in Chicago called Riverview, which had closed in the late 60s, like so many big city amusement parks did. And there was this one guy, there were a couple of people who started giving talks at libraries and senior centers about Riverview. And I went to one. It was hosted by Chuck Ladarchik was his name. He had written this book, and he showed these color slides he took at the park. I think we're very fortunate that he had the foresight to do that when people taking pictures was not a thing. And there he told me about this new club called American Coaster Enthusiast. I joined that. And then through that found out about National Amusement Park Historical Association. And I think it became evident during that time, while I love roller coasters, I'm not necessarily a roller coaster enthusiast. I'm an amusement park enthusiast because I love all amusement parks of all shapes and sizes, the small ones, the big ones, which, sometimes causes some minor tension in the family when we travel, and I'll take them to this small little amusement park. But I think they each have this fun, this basic appeal to people is, somewhere just to go to escape and have fun. My passion grew, my interest grew. I started getting some opportunities. By 1995, I was doing freelance writing for Amusement Business Magazine, which led to my involvement with the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, first as a writer for their Fun World magazine. And then when they started an oral history project, they asked me to oversee that. And then that eventually led to me being their formal historian. So
What a journey. I'm curious, as a kid, you're visiting these parks. Did you ever find yourself frustrated? There was a ride you wanted to go on and you were so young you didn't meet the height requirement. I'm curious.
well, I was lucky. I was kind of big for my age. Yes, but the one time I remember that is I went on a YMCA trip to Santa's Village, which was an amusement park outside of Chicago. And the weird thing was they didn't really have a height requirement. They had an age requirement. And I think I was like 8 years old and you had to be 9 to go on the big rides. I had to I had to sit around and watch a lot of the other people in the group go on the big rides.
It's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow,
but
okay. You're the same. I've never heard of an age requirement because usually, to me, it's size, but what do I know? I
yeah, the
mentioned,
thing too was at that time, by the time I was 8, I was riding the racer at Kings Island, which was their big roller coaster there at the time,
huh?
which most people probably know from the Brady Bunch episode at Kings Island, where the roller coaster they would ride. Yeah.
So you actually gave me something perfect to practice on. I've been working on my editing skills, and so I'm going to try to find a clip or a picture of that roller coaster and kind of superimpose it so we see it. So thank you for you gave me a learning opportunity here.
Great. Hmm.
And I love that you spoke to going to the public library and indulging your passion for amusement parks and reading the same three books. Just a quick side story. When I was a kid, I grew up in a town of about 3,200 people, and we did have a small public library. And I was homeschooled, so for a few years. So my mom would take me and my siblings to the public library. We'd go to check out a book. And there was one they had about the weather. And I've always said if I was better at math, I would have become a meteorologist. But decades later, someone showed up. My parents don't live there anymore. Someone showed up to my home and they brought this book, and they were getting ready to close down the library. But in the book was a note. If this book is ever discarded, please give to Danielle. And so they gave it to my parents to give to me. And it was just I don't know, maybe one day I'll get to guest, meteorologist here for the local station. But, it just those foundations as a kid, and your parents help nurture that in you. And so, yes, parents listening, indulge your kids' passions. You never know if they're going to become an amusement park historian. And I would love to know, how did you study for that?
Well, it's not. Before I go into that, I do want to just emphasize, yeah, the importance of supporting your children in their passions, because I was incredibly lucky too that my parents would, they thought this was kind of an unusual hobby, but they still supported it. And when we were on family vacations, a lot of times my dad would get up and drive me to the local amusement park and drop me off, and then go back, pick up the family and take them on whatever activities they had planned. So he was spending a lot of his vacation time driving us around. That it was in hindsight, it was just so important to developing that. But you were saying studying. I mean, if it's something you love to do, I wouldn't exactly call it studying. I mean, it's just like this, as I talked about, these original three books, checking them out repeatedly. I just had this thirst to learn more. The more you knew, the more you know, the more you want to know more.
Yes.
So what helped too was having the opportunities to tell stories. So writing the articles for Amusement Business and Fun World, and also NAFA Chronicle, which is the publication of the National Amusement Park Historical Association, and being able to tell the stories of the parks and the people who made the industry what it was, that kind of pushes you into, finding out about topics, and, finding out about the parks. And when I was given the opportunity to write my first book, it was 25 years ago. Again, you were given this topic by your publisher, and you had to tell that story, and you wanted to tell it in as complete and accurate a manner as possible. So it kind of feeds that thirst for knowledge.
100%. So you spoke to not being a roller coaster guy per se, but an amusement park person. But you did ride the roller coasters, didn't you?
Yeah, no, I like to say I will ride any roller coaster once. The key is, will I ride it a second time?
Which roller coaster have you found yourself riding several times?
There's a number that my local park here, Kennywood. It's actually a unique place now. It is the last of the old big city amusement parks in the country. It's a National Historic Landmark, has a number of last of its kind rides, and they're really known for their three historic wooden roller coasters, and all of which they impeccably maintain. And I'm lucky to live in a community where I never get tired of riding those rides. Their main one is the Thunderbolt. Even now, that's probably still my favorite wooden roller coaster, because being in Pittsburgh, rather than the approach to the chain lift that you see on most, you immediately drop out of the station into a ravine. So before that you hit before you hit the chain lift, you've already gone through two drops. So it's really unique in its layout. It has a nice level of intensity. It's not too intense, but it gives you a thrill. So that's one of my favorites. There's a few. Cedar Point in Ohio, Millennium Force comes to mind.
Have you written the Rattler?
I have not. I haven't had a chance to go to Fiesta, Texas yet. No.
Well, if you ever do, please let me know. I will meet you down there. So when I knew we were going to get to sit down and talk with you, I'm curious, because amusement parks tend to have carnival rides, and I consider myself more of a carnival ride person. I think it just feels more in control for me. I mean, on a roller coaster, I'm at the whim of gravity and physics, and hopefully everything's going to work out. I'm not going to get stuck anywhere. So I'm curious, what's considered the difference between like a roller coaster, an amusement park ride, and a carnival ride?
Carnival rides are also known in the industry as flat rides, the ones, kind of
Is
that
it
takes you
flat
around in
rides?
circles. Flat
Okay.
rides, yeah,
Yeah.
because you can set them up on a flat surface. But um, yeah, those tend to be more common because they tend to be smaller.
Mm.
You see, and as such, they can be moved around from place to place, which is, for carnivals. I mean, I think the appeal of those is you can pack a lot of thrill into a small place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're important for amusement parks because you want to provide that complete package. Like you said, you're not that interested in roller coasters. You like the spinning rides. And when you're there with families, you want to have a variety of activities for them to do. So, I
Uh-huh.
mean, I personally tend to avoid the ones that do a lot of intense spinning. I had a bad experience on a tilt-a-whirl as a kid. So,
No, the
yeah.
Tilt-A-Whirl is my favorite ride.
Well, I had an experience where the operator left us on for just a little bit too long. So,
So, in a bit, I have a story to share with you about a particular Tilt-A-Whirl experience, but let's go back to just your journey being an amusement park historian. Again, this is did you did you kind of create the role?
uh, I think so. I mean, there've been people out there who've written books on it, but in terms of like it being such an encompassing thing, I mean, there are a few other people out there who do that. But for me to have two formal historian roles for both IAAPA and for NAFA,
Mhm.
I would say is unique.
Yeah. So, to touch back on the education part, so I was curious, do you have a degree in history?
No, I mean, well, I think what's interesting about this is I like to describe it as a hobby run amok. Uh, I have never really had a drawn a regular paycheck from the industry. I had a career in market
Interesting.
research, primarily on the economic development side.
Okay.
And so this is always something I've done in my spare time. And yeah, I have a business degree. I have an MBA. I mean, I've always loved history. Before I really discovered amusement parks, I was a big fanatic of military history and baseball history. So, I looked in when I was college, should I get a minor in history? I took a lot of, if I had extra electives credits I needed to get, I usually looked to the history department first. So, the interest in history has always been there. I just never got a formal history degree.
Jim, so this actually is a great something great to explore because what I'm hearing is you've embraced the role. And for someone, and it's not, there's been other people who've built careers around a passion maybe that wasn't their background, but they were interested enough in something and went out and learned all about it. And then it became what they were known for, even though they didn't have any formal training. And for some people, though, being able to overcome that imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
holds them back from fully just taking that leap of faith. At what point were you comfortable saying, "Okay, this is no longer a hobby run amok. This is what I'm known for, and I'm good with that. I'm proud of that."
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was when I was the more I got involved with the IAPA, when they invited me to oversee their oral history project. That was, I think, really one of those moments because I had been historian for NAFA for many years. But yeah, that was a volunteer nonprofit, so it
Okay.
was something I found a volunteer role to do. When you had that endorsement from the industry that they valued what you did and asked you to take on a role of responsibility within the industry and the organization. I think that was really that moment. It was something I absolutely loved because I would go down to their convention every year and interview, 6, 8, 10 people about their career in the industry. I would always get feedback from people in the industry that, we so appreciate what you're doing. It is so important to capture these stories. My feeling was, you've given me this great gift. I mean, I'm getting to sit down with some of these legends in the industry. I mean, I should be paying you for the role, almost. But, so to have that endorsement from the people who actually are in the industry was, I think, really that watershed moment.
Mhm. Yeah, that was the moment where I don't know if you've heard of the expression "all hat, no cattle."
Hmm.
That's, that's how we kind of based our name. Or no, these are people who are walking the walk and talking the talk. That was the moment you got your hat and your cattle.
Hmm.
Yeah. As the industry has evolved, so you dropped some pretty like core core unlocking memories, Reader's Digest, phone books, and as just the world has evolved, right? Technology has evolved and amusement parks have evolved. How have you found yourself staying on top of these trends of this research?
Well, I think, that's been, I think, one of the more dramatic changes in the industry. When I first started following it, I would say it was comparatively small. It
Mhm.
was, predominantly in the United States and Europe, a little bit less Asia. And, to see that global growth and the growth of the industry, it in a lot of ways difficult to stay on top of it. You see so much going on now in Asia and the Middle East. So much new technology. The definition of just what an amusement park is seems to be getting increasingly blurred. I mean, you have cruise ships adding amusement park rides
That's
now.
right.
You have, a museum, near us is going to be putting in a go-kart track. So, just what is an amusement park these days? So I think that's where, where you look at, IAAPA, they term this now the attractions industry
Mm,
because it's not just amusement parks. You have water parks, you have family entertainment centers, you have what they now call location-based entertainment, where a lot of these old vacant stores and malls now have
yes.
entertainment components to them. So it's become this very broad spectrum of attractions and a very global business. And I think what has also then become interesting is as the industry has grown, so have the opportunities. I often wonder, how my life would have been different if I was born 20 years later. Because when I was, in college and looking at careers, I talked to people in the industry, and it was pretty much you get a seasonal job and work your way up the ladder. That's what
Oh,
you do.
yeah.
Now you have colleges that have programs in attractions management. You have, IAAPA, which really has put a lot of emphasis now into developing that next generation of leaders. They have a foundation that offers scholarships. They have career development programs at their conventions. So, seeing now the attractions industry as a career path, I think has been one of the more dramatic changes I've seen. And it's just been fascinating to see the me's of today being able to really pursue a career path now in the industry.
So it wouldn't just had a leaf fall off the fake tree. Oh my gosh. Um, it wouldn't be a current conversation without maybe asking how, with all this talk around AI, is there how would AI affect the amusement park industry
Well,
other than, automating some of the maybe entry
yeah,
things?
I mean, technology has always played a role. I mean, you go
Mm,
back 100 years.
tell us, yes.
When amusement parks started, the rides that we know and love today were almost an afterthought. The emphasis was more on picnicking, more passive recreation, a
Oh,
place to go and get away and enjoy a quiet day. After World War I, you started seeing, I think, the reflection of the development of industrial technology in the wartime started reflecting itself in amusement parks. That's where roller coasters really evolved into thrill rides. The flat rides that you loved so much, that's where you
yeah.
started seeing them become so common throughout the industry. And you've seen that throughout history, and I've always found it fascinating that as technology has developed, people still tend to gravitate more towards that traditional thrill of a roller coaster or tilt-a-whirl. In the 1980s, you saw Disney debut Star Tour, and a lot of people were saying the roller coaster is now obsolete because you can build one of these simulators and reprogram it every couple of years and provide a whole new ride experience.
Hmm.
5 years after Star Tours opened, Cedar Point opened Magnum XL 200, the first 200-foot tall roller coaster, and it launched the one of the biggest roller coaster arms races in history.
Uh-huh.
So it's people still tend to gravitate back to that traditional thrill. A few years ago with virtual reality, they tried outfitting virtual reality headsets on roller coasters as a way to enhance the experience.
Uh-huh.
It was not popular with people. So, I mean, I think technology will always play a role. You see some amazing things now with some of the attractions being developed in Florida and overseas. But I mean, that will be more of a complementary instead of a competitive type of thing. That's basic thrill of plunging off a 200-foot roller coaster is still not going to be beat.
Yeah, and I will be cheering you on from the ground. So,
As you wait in line for the tilt-a-whirl. Yes.
exactly.
Mhm.
You please tell me, and the name of the park escapes me right now, but the name of the documentary does not. It was called Class Action Park.
Yes, Action Park.
Action Park, where it seemed development itself, the science itself wasn't even being discussed in the room.
Mhm.
I am curious, did you ever go to that park?
I did not have a chance to go there. I mean, I had long been fascinated because I remember, one of the first times I heard about it, there was a amusement park directory that came out late 70s, early 80s, and they had just like five of the most unique amusement parks in the country, and they mentioned Action Park because they emphasized the participatory attractions. The
Uh-huh.
go-karts, the boat rides, the water slides, and a lot of them were built in house. So because you didn't have this robust supply chain then that were creating a lot of these unique rides. And I mean, I think the fact that you are controlling your own experience on so many of those attractions kind of fed the park's rather notorious reputation.
Yes. It I
Yeah.
was so hoping you had attended and had a story to share with
Mhm.
us because that in itself, if no one's ever heard of that, go watch the documentary and you'll be grateful for all the
Yeah.
engineers and everyone who works on the rides that we go on.
But they're the outlier. It's a very safe industry. Yeah, the operators know that if they have a reputation of being not a safe place to take your family, that's going to kill their business. And there has been instances of that happening where a park has gotten a reputation of not being safe. So, I mean, yeah, all the operators pay a lot of attention to the safety. I just always want to emphasize that. The illusion kind of, I think, tends to the illusion of danger is part of the, I think, basic appeal, but in reality, it doesn't really exist.
What ride have you been on that this you felt the illusion of danger?
A good thrill ride is always going to provide that illusion. I mean, yeah, there's like the first time I rode Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point. It was the world's tallest roller coaster at the time. And the thing I remember that one was the first time going up the hill. It was next door to one of their rides called Gemini, which back in the 70s enjoyed a brief run as one of the world's tallest roller coasters. And I just remember going up the hill and seeing that ride just get smaller and smaller and smaller as we went up. And I'm just wondering how much further are we going? A lot. There's a lot of drop towers where they have magnetic brakes, so there is a free fall portion of it that you wonder. You always have that sense of doubt. Are the brakes going to actually catch? They're magnetic brakes; they always catch. So, um, uh, like a sky coaster. I don't know if you're familiar with those. That's where they like it's a big pendulum ride. They put you in a harness and haul you up, and you pull it. And so there's again that moment, that free fall sensation before the cable kicks in. So there are a lot of rides that have that brief moment where you just wonder, is this the time? But that almost never comes. Yeah.
Jim, as we're listening to you, you know so much about roller coasters for someone who, if you hadn't told me, I would have thought your background is in physics or you have some type of math
Mm-hmm.
degree but how, when you got started and you started talking to people in the industry and starting writing these articles, did you find it difficult to get into some of those rooms because you didn't have that background?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think back when the enthusiast world was first getting started, you did see kind of these mixed reactions. I think there were a lot of like operators who they see it as a business and they just wonder who are these people that yes, feel so passionately about it. But as time has evolved, you've seen a partnership develop. That
Mhm.
we are the industry's greatest advocates as enthusiasts, and the industry is grown to really appreciate that. That we can provide that outside opinion. We can provide you know certain levels of input in terms of our experiences. So it's evolved into a great partnership over the years. But no, what I've always been, I think you see that this is an industry where people are devoting their careers to making other people happy. So
Mhm.
it tends to take a certain person to be involved in that. And so you find it's a fun group of people who welcome outsiders. I've often been surprised about how accommodating some of these people are, or some of the times I've showed up at a park and they'll take a big chunk of their day out to show me around. We just put this in, and one park I went to years ago, the owner was so excited about his new refreshment tables he put up because they mounted into the ground with one central post, so they were a lot easier to clean up with underneath. You didn't, yeah. So you know, to see the excitement they have and how open they are in sharing that excitement, it's always been a great thing about this industry.
Well, that explains why you agreed to sit down and chat with us. Takes us, like you mentioned, it's just a special person. Do you consider yourself retired now?
Well, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I am now working because I have to not, or I'm working because I want to, not because I have to. I retired from my full-time job a couple of years ago. So that gives me some time to focus more on industry related projects. Just finished my 11th book. I was honored to be invited to write the 100th anniversary book for Knoebels Amusement Resort in Pennsylvania, and had a wonderful time working with 3 generations of that family to tell that story. And it's a very beloved park, but they've managed to build kind of this oasis. You're in the woods in central Pennsylvania. They draw over 1 million people a year. They have a campground. It's just a great place to go. Still offer free admission. Have some of the best food you'll find in any amusement park. You can bring
Uh-huh.
a picnic basket. It's a real throwback.
So when to speak to just overall, this life that you've lived, you I'm sitting here a bit in awe. It does my soul so good. For some of us who have that passion and find ourselves in roles, like you said, where we have to work, it's so inspiring to hear someone who's done it. And yeah, Austin's over here nodding his head like, yeah, like it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
When
well,
some
I do have to say I was fortunate to have a career I really enjoyed.
uh,
I mean, you can tell the historian part of me likes to do research. I was
Yes.
fortunate enough to find a profession where I could do that in my day job, market research. I live in the Pittsburgh area. Back in the early 90s, where my wife and I were looking for a place to set up, to really kind of put down roots, we really became enamored with Pittsburgh and its character and its soul. And I was fortunate enough to find this position to be, head of research for the local economic development organization. So
Mhm.
during the day, I got to research Pittsburgh and tell Pittsburgh stories. Evenings and weekends, I got to research the amusement park industry and tell those stories. So, yeah, I think I've been very fortunate in my life to have a vocation and an avocation that so nicely complemented one another.
And it sounds like you had a really great support system at home.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I started with my parents. I was, really fortunate that I found a, spouse who shared my passion. She likes to go to the parks. So I remember back when we were dating, I took her on a trip, uh, and I think I kind of pushed the envelope a little bit because. It would, we'd be going to amusement parks and I'd say, oh, there used to be an amusement park 5 miles that way. Why don't we go check that out? And she had as good a time as I did. So, I mean, I've realized I was fortunate enough to find a life partner that, would alternatively support, participate, and tolerate my avocation. And then fortunately, we had 3 great kids who love it just as much as we do.
Did you, along the way, find a mentor who helped guide you?
When I became the historian for NAFA, I mean, I was 20 years old. Um,
What?
the leadership of that organization, Jim Abate and Tom Kohat, they really saw in me because NAFA was founded by the nostalgic baby boomers who used to go to Riverview in Chicago, and yes, found this need for some sort of organization to remember those historic amusement parks.
Mhm.
So they saw me coming in as a young person who had this passion. So, yeah, I was grateful that they kind of empowered me with a leadership role so early in my life. When I moved to Pittsburgh, I had, I got to know the people at Kennywood. Back then it was owned by 2 families who had owned it for decades. And then they also had a general manager, the president of the company, Carl Hughes. Um, he really appreciated this outside person having such an interest in the industry, in the history, because he was a historian. Yeah, he was a big history buff too. He kind of connected me into IAAPA to get me, to help me out, and that got me exposure to some of the people there. Another person, Tim O'Brien, who who was a writer for Amusement Business Magazine. We had connected through some industry events. And again, he appreciated my passion and interest. And so he's the guy that got me into freelance writing for amusement business. So, there were these people who inside the industry who saw my interest and passion. I think, saw at the time doing it as a relatively young person and really sought to leverage that.
I hope the listener has picked up on several things that you touched on. One, you mentioned meeting people at industry events. So sometimes you don't know when you go to an event and the person that you connect with, how your life can change by attending that event. You spoke to so many people who helped along your way. I am curious because I had no idea that you entered the role at 20. And that's a lot of trust that was put on you or that
Mhm.
was placed in you. So did that motivate you and you thought, okay, well, this is the road that was, I'm accepting it and I'm charging forward? Or did you take a step back before and it scared you a little and you decided, no, I'm gonna move through the fear and figure it out and run with it?
Um, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I was able to do was embrace these opportunities.
Mm.
Um,
Yes.
you know, when I was given that opportunity at NAFA was, at that time they were what 6 years old as an organization. They were still very small. A lot of what we did was just we would get together at members' houses in Chicago and share vacation photos and talk about amusement parks. What's been so gratifying is getting a leadership role in that organization and now being able to we had good times, we had bad times. We were able to nurture that NAFA through that and leverage our passion for amusement parks to really build this partnership with the industry. And now we see this new generation of people coming in. I know some of our older leaders, they were skeptical because I'd be going to these IAAPA events and find these young people who just craved anything they could find about the industry and saying, we're missing this opportunity. And they're like, young people don't care about history. Well, no, they might not care about history per se, but they cared about the industry and how it got to where it was.
Mm.
So we've been fortunate in NAFA now to bring in a new generation of leaders who who've really taken this organization to the next level. And I think it's fascinating that we've evolved from nostalgic baby boomers, kind of pining for their youth,
Uh-huh.
to a lot of our leaders now work in the industry and have careers in the industry.
Mhm.
So I think that's really speaks to how this industry has changed and evolved, and this growing partnership between the enthusiast community and the industry, but also then I think being offered these opportunities, through IAAPA and amusement business to use that in a way that directly benefited the industry. Because I know when I was asked to do the oral history project, I initially was hesitant, because we had 3 kids at home under the age of 10. This time was really precious, and it's like, oh geez, do I need another thing? Fortunately for them, they didn't take no for an answer. Fortunately for me, they didn't take no for an answer, because I said, I
Uh-huh.
don't know if I could really swing this. And it's like, don't worry about it, we'll make all the travel arrangements for you and all that. And it's like, how can I say no? Unfortunately, my wife, Marlo, she said, yeah, you got to do this. It was same thing with the book opportunities I was given. I back in the 1990s, people would ask, "Are you ever going to write a book?" And I'd say no, because I knew people who wrote books. It's a very niche area,
Mhm.
so it was hard to find a publisher. You didn't sell a lot of copies. A lot of them ended up with a garage full of unsold books. So I was fortunate again to be presented with an opportunity. Stackpole Books, which was a publisher, they had this series of books. They were a Pennsylvania publisher, so they had like Pennsylvania diners, Pennsylvania breweries. They wanted to do one on Pennsylvania amusement parks, and went to the guy who wrote the diner book, Brian Butko, who is director of publications at the Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh. Said, we want to do an amusement park book. Would you like to? Yeah, would you be interested? And he said, well, I don't know a whole lot about the subject. Reach out to this guy, Jim Futrell. And, again, it was one of those things, we had 2 young kids at home. It was a big time commitment.
Mhm.
So there was some hesitancy, but it's, you kind of think, will I ever get this opportunity again? We got to
Right.
we need to figure out a way to make it happen. And again, and that I look at them. We did four books for Stackpole over the decade of the 2000s, and it really kind of became a great family activity. I'm fortunate that the subject matter lent itself to
Yeah.
that. It was like, okay, kids, this summer we're visiting every amusement park in New York State. Um, so, I mean, that's what our family vacation was for several years, going
Yeah.
to research this. And again, so lucky to have the support of Marlo because, we'd show up at these parks, and a lot of times the owner or manager would take me off to the office. And so she'd be stuck keeping them entertained for a few hours, which is easy to do in an amusement park. But, and then when I had to write the books, just the amount of time it would take. I'm very grateful to have someone who understood and at least could see, we're able to create these great family memories, but that there was a certain sacrifice that was involved.
A beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. And we recently replayed Jeremy Lennox's episode. He was the very first person to sit down with us on this podcast. And at the time, I was extremely interested in learning how entrepreneurs and executives balanced work life. We hear a lot about that. And what I have learned over the course of a year of doing this podcast is there's not really a balance. There are seasons in life that are going to ask of you to be busier than other seasons. And therein, I think is where that balance comes out, because there are seasons where you're presented with an opportunity and you're gonna have to lock in, as the young kids would say, and devote so much of your time to that. And then once that project is done, then you can take maybe some time to relax, reflect, whatever fills your
Mm-hmm.
cup. But I I didn't realize that, with these conversations, I have learned that it's really a season. And it seems even, you know, it's for everyone, not just entrepreneurs or executives, but people who are out doing things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's I think the thing. Yeah, the reason I'm sitting here right now is I've been fortunate enough to um, be able to embrace the opportunities that have been presented to me and figure out ways to make that work too. I think that's the other thing. I mean, don't necessarily reject it at the beginning. Take a minute to figure out, here's the opportunity. How can I make that work with my other demands in life?
Hmm. Oh, Jim, you have dropped. I mean, that's one of the reasons, again, just sitting down and speaking with people. There's so much to be learned about life, not just business, but life overall.
Um, yeah, like
Before,
you
go
can
ahead.
tell how much I enjoy talking about this. So.
I mean, yeah, it is very obvious you're a historian too. I work with a historian, and I joke sometimes like, "Oh, your professor is coming out." Before we let you go, that age-old question, "You just won the Super Bowl. Where are you going? Like, what are you gonna do now? Where are you going next?" And the answer is always Disney World.
Hmm.
Would that be your answer, or would you pick a different amusement park?
Uh, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to spend some time in Europe, and I love the amusement parks over there. I mean, the ones here I can, are not that hard to get to. So to if they're sending me somewhere, I'm going to Europe. There's some just beautiful historic parks there. The world's oldest amusement park, Bakken, outside of Copenhagen, Tivoli in Copenhagen, the Prater in Vienna. Um, you know,
Again, if
yes,
that comes up in trivia, you know who to thank.
to me they have a different vibe over there. That they do have thrill rides, but that's kind of not the emphasis in a lot of the parks. It's more the overall experience and the grounds. Um, there's a park in Europe, the Netherlands called Efteling, which I say is probably one of the most beautiful man-made environments in the world. Just the landscaping and the environment they've created is just stunningly gorgeous. So yeah, I'd go there. I mean, I'd you know see the history there. Enjoy kind of the European amusement parks.
We gotta add that to a bucket list then, visit
Mm-hmm.
a European amusement park. Thank you again, and I will drop places where people can connect with you in the show notes.
Great. All right. Well, thanks. Yeah, it's been fun.